Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about how the car market currently makes absolutely no sense and how it is driving me crazy. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get right into it. Let's give a quick recap on everything that's happening and then dive into why none of this makes any sense. So first off, interest rates increased a massive amount, which decreased affordability. Auto repos are on the rise. Vehicle sales are on the decline. And so some manufacturers right now are seeing their respective dealers increase in inventory, whereas other manufacturers are seeing their dealers actually decrease in inventory. Complete contradiction right there that we'll kind of talk about a little bit later. And then on top of that, manufacturing overall is declining a pretty massive amount because for the 2022 sales year, everyone predicted we we're going to sell like 15 million new cars, whereas now it's pacing for like 13 million new cars. And it sounds like 2023 is going to be even worse. Now, despite the increase in interest rates, the increase in car repos, and the increase in inventory within dealerships, retail pricing hasn't really cracked. It's still pretty dang high. Although wholesale prices have declined a massive amount with used cars. Now, obviously, wholesale prices only really apply to used cars. They kind of apply to certain new cars, but again, we kind of got to discuss that a little bit later. And that pretty much catches you up to date. There's a lot happening and a lot of it contradicts itself. So if that sounded really confusing, that's because it is really confusing and it doesn't make any sense. The deeper I dive into this whole situation, the less sense it makes. And that's why my videos have kind of been all over the place, because the more I dive into the used car market, the more I dive into the new car market, the more I realize that both of those markets are contradicting each other and they're contradicting themselves, and it's a really strange situation. If we start with the used car market, retail values are still really high, but wholesale values are pretty low compared to what they were just about a year ago, and they are continuing to decline every single week. And so you'd think that these retail values would start to come down, and they're just not. They're not really cracking. On certain segments, kind of, but if you look at the broader market, not really. And I tried to explain this with the fact that a lot of dealers right now have older aged used inventory, and well, they paid too much money for that inventory, and so they just aren't willing to lose any money right now, and so they aren't really coming down their prices. But that only half explains the situation, because it gets to a certain point where these dealers can see that their inventory is losing X amount of value every single day, and it's better to just take the loss now rather than take a bigger loss in the future. And so you think that these dealers would start doing something, but the pricing isn't really cracking, and that's where this whole contradiction starts. Is the whole supply-demand dynamic within the used car market is completely messed up, and I think that there's just a gap between dealers and consumers, because consumers right now are really freaked out, and they just are, not really in a situation where they're euphoric when it comes to buying, right? They're being very tentative, and that's why we're seeing a lot of cash buyers. We're seeing a lot of buyers that have really good credit, and not a lot of buyers that have bad credit, because the only people that are buying are people that are extremely well prepared, and they're not going to buy unless they get the deal that they want to get. Whereas dealers, right, are just coming off of a couple years where people were buying up literally everything and paying anything for it. And so I think that mindset gap is just a big part of what's happening here. Is these dealers still think that they have pricing power even though they see these declines in wholesale values, and then these customers don't think that there's pricing power anymore because, well, they see that the whole market's coming down, and maybe they're going to meet in the middle, but it's contradicting itself right now. Now, if we move from that over to new cars, this is where things get even weirder. Now, the new car market isn't as easy as the used car market, and the reason being is there's a lot more manipulation within the new car market as opposed to the used car market. Because the used car market, if it's running properly, is a normal supply-demand market. So if there is, higher supply and lower demand, then values are going to go down. And if it's the inverse, then values will go up. Whereas with the new car market, right, manufacturers set the retail price, and dealers can choose to sell the vehicles at that retail price. They can choose to sell it above that retail price or below that retail price. And sometimes manufacturers put out incentives that make it so the vehicle is technically being sold below the retail price. And so you can see there's a lot of market manipulation within the new car market. And on top of that, dealers that sell the same brand talk to each other. Now, this isn't technically legal in certain states and areas, but it's what happens, right? That's just what happens in the car industry. Is if dealers are going to have a specialty product that they're going to get in the near future, they're going to talk to their other local dealers and ask them, hey, what do you happen to be charging for this? And they'll be like, oh, well, I may or may not be doing, this amount over stickers. So then they can all basically be at the same price on these specialty vehicles. And that's why whenever you see specialty vehicles released in the market, by the way, they're all like the same exact markup from every single dealer across. I mean, there is difference region to region. But anyways, the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of manipulation within the new market, and so that definitely causes some complications. But the thing that's really strange is, or at least what I'm noticing is strange, is a lot of these manufacturers that are struggling with supply. So like a lot of the Japanese automakers, for example, Toyota, Honda, for example, they like have no supply right now, but their dealers aren't really charging markups on their product. But then manufacturers that aren't having as many issues with supply anymore are still charging markup on their product. And that's where the new car market is starting to contradict itself, because you think that with supply demand dynamics that, well, these automakers that have no supply would have big markups on their product, and then the automakers that have supply they'd have to be discounting their product to get rid of it. And that's not what's happening. And that's why the market, again, is really confusing when it comes to new cars, because when you jump in, it's like you just can't know what to expect. With this information that makes absolutely no sense, how can you use this as a buyer to help you out? First off, if you're looking at a used car, you need to understand that the used car market is declining at a pretty rapid rate, and you need to just be patient with the market and be patient with these retail values, because there's going to be a point where, the dam water is going to start, building bigger cracks, and eventually it's going to overflow, and these prices are going to have to come down. I think it's going to take a lot of dealers going out of business and having to basically just wholesale all of their inventory and flood the market with their inventory for us to see those cracks in retail values, because dealers have enough cash reserves to kind of hold out for a while and hold on to their inventory. But once those cash reserves get eaten up, then yeah, I just don't know when that's going to happen, because, first off, dealers have made a ton of money over the last few years, so they've got more cash on hand than they ever have in the past. And so it's just a waiting game at this point. When it comes to new cars, oh man, it is a crazy situation. So again, you're just going to have to dive into the manufacturer that you're purchasing from. Is supply building back up, or is supply getting even worse? And the trend that I've seen is with most European automakers, supply is getting worse. With most Japanese and just other Asian automakers, supply is getting worse. With most American automakers, it seems like supply is getting slightly better with vehicles. And again, those are just general trends. It's a case-by-case basis with different brands and with different vehicles. And so you're just going to have to kind of do your own research on each of these brands and figure out what the supply is like. If the supply is really bad with a brand, then what I would recommend doing is obviously adopting a mindset of patience. Understand that if you want to get a vehicle from that brand, you're going to have to wait. And since you're going to have to wait already, then do some shopping and find a dealership that's going to give you the best possible deal. I doubt you're going to get anything under MSRP on these on the product rather that is in low supply. But at least I would search for an MSRP deal, because in today's market with interest rates and everything, it doesn't really make sense to pay over MSRP on 99% of product. It better be really, really special for you to pay that markup on it. Now, something else to mention is, and this is just my guess based on what a lot of dealers have been telling me with what their manufacturers have been kind of, starting to leak out to them, November, December might be really good months to buy because of where interest rates will be. And I'm not talking about at a Federal Reserve level. I'm talking about with manufacturer financing. A lot of manufacturers are seeing this slowdown in buying, and they always want to pump up numbers towards the end of the year. And so there are probably going to be quite a few manufacturer incentives, not in terms of discount on vehicles, but in terms of rate buy down on vehicles. And so what the manufacturer will do is they'll sell the vehicle to you at MSRP, for example, and then instead of you getting, a 6 or 7% interest rate like what you can get today, maybe they'll have like a 3% interest rate on the vehicle if you finance through their particular financing program with the manufacturer. And so there is a pretty high chance that will happen November, December. So those 2 months might be really good months to buy, but then understand that especially if those programs get released, like there's going to be a buying frenzy for a lot of different cars. And so car availability is going to go down. So it's going to be a catch-22 where you'll be able to get a lower interest rate on a car, but then it'll be a lot more difficult to get a car. So then I would go back to the cash buyers and tell you that right now might be the best time to pay cash for a new car if you're able to get a good deal on it, because there's some inventory availability right now, and that inventory availability will most likely be wiped out throughout November and December. That's going to sum things up for today's video. Hopefully that helps you guys out, and hopefully that helps you guys understand just how crazy this market is. And yeah, like I said, it's driving me insane. I'll continue researching. I'll see you.